Good morning. This is the
Good
Pennsylvania.
morning.
Good morning. This is the Pennsylvania Coalition of Public Charter Schools, and this is our show, Growing Up Charter. I am the host and CEO of the coalition, Dr. Annie Clark. I'm joined today by Mr. Robert Lysek, who is a school leader and founded Executive Education Academy Charter School in the Allentown area, and he's here to talk to us today about leadership. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Clark. It's my pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how did you come to start a charter school?
Sure. Was born in Bethlehem, so I'm a Pennsylvania native, or born in Allentown, excuse me, raised in Bethlehem. In college, I went to Lockhaven University. I decided to major in geography, and post-graduation, I wasn't an ed major in college, but just a geography major, which is a little different. But post-graduation, I landed a situation where I was a school counselor, kind of teacher role in a residential program in Pennsylvania. And that kind of excited and ignited me to get into education a little bit more, and kind of was the foundation and pillars of my career in education. From that point on, I've really been in education, not just in the Commonwealth, but all over the country for over 20 years. I also was in law enforcement for a short stint, but education always called me back. And then being a native of this community, going backwards a bit, I was in Philadelphia for 10 years, helping the charter networks there. Towards the end of my stint in Philly, like maybe the last 3 years of those 10 years was with charter networks. And we said, my core group, who's still with me present day here at Executive, we said, why don't we found our own? We're helping school districts, we're helping charter schools. Why don't we go and start our own? We looked at my community, even though we're in Philadelphia, the Allentown School District at the time was distressed and is still distressed.
Yeah.
We said, why don't we find a building, and why don't we make a petition with the Allentown School District and see what happens, and try to open one in Allentown. And in 2014, the ASD School Board, with a 9-0 vote, awarded us our charter. We started that September, and we're currently at almost 1,400 students going into this is our 9th year. We're just excited to be here and help the Allentown community, which was one of the goals of our petition. And that's kind of how my career started, and how I've ended up now present day here at Executive.
That is a great beginning to our conversation. I really appreciate that. When you were coming up, who mentored you as a young person or even as a leader yourself?
That's a really good question. I've had several. Both my parents have been mentors of mine. Early on in my career, when I was a school counselor / teacher, I had a gentleman by the name of Dan O'Neill, who was a big time mentor of mine, and still is present day. I'll reach out to him often. I've been blessed to have some people in my life in the profession of education who I've been able to lean on over the years. Beyond these people that have always been available to me to help me grow. And then I try to focus my time and energy on being a mentor for up and coming young educators as well, because I try to pay that back. I'm grateful that I had few in the business, the one I referenced, and I believe he prepared and taught me well. If I really look at, and I can zero in on one professionally, that would be the gentleman who really, really supported me and helped my career in education.
Wow, that's great. I've been to your school on several occasions, and I'm always impressed with sort of the structure of the school. It's unique, I feel like, because you have so many leaders concentrated over a few grades. And so that way you're sort of like, you sort of follow the same philosophy that I do, that people lead from everywhere. Like everyone in your organization can be a leader and is a leader. But tell me a little bit more about, like, how did you come up with that structure And how does introducing your young professionals to leadership roles early creates this long time sustainability of education, of quality education?
Yes, and we are a very structured school, and you've had a chance to see it several times. We are a K to 12. I didn't really reference the grade configuration that we have. You know, with the 1,400 kids, we have a full elementary, middle, and high school. We do have we have great success retaining our people and retaining our leaders in particular. You heard about our core group, who I talked about. It's been with me for a long time. So my senior team, pretty much that entire core has been with me for over 10 years, some over 20. So we've been together for some time. And what we do well when it comes to leadership is we're very good at training up and coming and future leaders. Well, identifying them first, then supporting them, then training them, and then growing them and allow them to develop. We have over, I think currently 10 certified principals in one school.
Yeah.
And they're scattered all throughout the building because of the amount of grades we have and the way we break our school up. We have a large amount of credentialed, certified leadership, as well as we have a lot of experienced leadership through our ranks. And they've stuck with us, and they believe in the model. And our model is real simple. You know, we have a normative culture in the building, and it's based on expectation and what's right. And we stand behind the expectations we create. We enforce them. We make sure we have a safe, clean, positive, engaging educational environment every day. So our leaders want to be a part of it and stay. So like I mentioned earlier, not too often we have someone leave. And if we do have them leave, it's maybe for a better opportunity because we groomed them well, and we support that also.
Right.
You know, take what we teach you and put it on the road. I have a pretty extensive family tree in this business. I have leaders all over the place operating, you know, networks of schools at this time, and then our principals and superintendents and those type of things. And we take pride in that. We're sad and we'll miss you, but we want to see you grow and be successful. So we spend a lot of time on grooming solid objects, you know, type staff members who are rocks, who have certain characteristics. You know, we teach here, and then those managers teach and pay it forward and push it down.
Yeah.
So for instance, if we have a manager out in the building, our model is the assistant to that manager or the community coach to that manager bumps up and is the acting manager for the day. So that's a way we teach hands-on future managers. So we're constantly growing our bench. And that's really the key, in our opinion, to a really successful, strong school culture.
I love that. There's a ton of research that's done that says leadership only counts if there's something really at stake. Like you really can't say that you're training someone to be a leader unless there's a chance of failure. And that's how people really do grow, is in those opportunities to do the real work out of philosophy and really into practice. You talked a lot about, I just think your philosophy does remind me of a coach in lots of ways, which I'm always excited about. And over the years, some of the best schools that I have visited are ran by former athletes. They take what they've learned in athletics, and then they apply that to leadership. They apply that to their students. So can you tell me more about your background, maybe as an athlete, and then also how do you think that applies to your school?
I think it's big. I was a student athlete in high school and in college. I played college football at Lehigh Valley University, and it taught me a lot. I think it teaches you how to win or lose. The competition is good and healthy, can be good and healthy. How to work as a team. I think that's so important, not just in our field, but in all fields. If you have a bunch of individuals running around your team, your organization will not be successful. Teaches you a game plan, a mission to succeed. Teaches you about adversity, struggle, how to overcome that. I think athletics is very, very important. It was to me, basically saved my life, in my opinion. Without athletics, I'm not sure I would have made it on to college. So I'm happy to say that. And that's one reason why I thought it was really important to add athletics here. Had an opportunity to see a real successful athletic program in high school and what it did for student athletes and what it did for all the students and the culture and climate and the energy level in the school. I thought was just great to see. You know, we want to provide the best across the board, not just athletically, academically, socially, you know, facilities. So when you implement an athletic program and you run it the right way with the expectations we have, it energizes the building even more so and creates even a stronger culture in your school and a lot of pride around athletics. And then that translates to the pride and helps with the pride in the overall school and what we're doing everywhere else. So I think it's big. I currently coach 2 flag teams. I have 2 boys, so I'm in a lot of their. I was at wrestling and basketball last night, and I got football. I got wrestling tonight and football tomorrow, and basketball on Saturday and Sunday. So it's a big part of my life. So I try to use what I learned from sports to incorporate successful initiatives in our school and in my career.
That's awesome. You touched on this a little bit, and I want to dig a little bit deeper about what are some of the attributes when you're identifying leaders in your organization? Like, what is like the first thing? Like you've hired a new person, they've come in. What immediately makes you think, hey, there's something more to this person, and or your team sees something more? Like, what attributes do you see in those individuals?
I think command presence. I don't think you'd hear that much from people, but having the ability to be this, you heard me reference earlier, solid object. It's part of a model and belief that I train and talk about and we subscribe to here. So having a staff, any position in the building that's calm, unafraid, empathetic, consistent, clear, has a sense of presence, not intimidating, able to listen, like these characteristics, I see these in people. We look and we identify them and we look to grow that even further, what we can teach them. And they have the foundation in place when you talk about those type of traits. And we try when we identify someone like that to immediately grow them because those are big time signs, in our opinion, of a good leader.
Yes.
And especially in urban education or education in general, you have to have those to be successful with the students we serve.
How do you think you cultivating those attributes in your staff, how does that translate down to your students?
Oh, it's leading by example. I think it's great. I think when our students see our administration and our teaching staff behaving at a certain level, providing quality, taking things seriously, being very organized and prepared for them, I think it definitely shapes them, molds them. We have expectations, I mentioned earlier, for all, even guests. So for instance, we don't wear hats in the building. My teachers don't come into class with a hat on. They come in with a shirt and tie, or they're dressed professionally, depending on, you know, male or female staff member. We have a particular type of dress code because we expect a dress code with our students.
Right.
So we're teaching our we're modeling always for our students. Our behaviors are so important in what we do in our building, to carry ourselves a certain way, to expect our students to behave that same way. And they get it here, and I hear and see it translate into the community when I see our students beyond these school walls. And that's truly the key, helping these students become successful members of our society.
Yes.
We're teaching these expectations and these norms to them so that occurs. And we have to be operating always at a high level to make sure we do that.
I think that's such an important topic to talk about a little bit, is that, and many times in our charter schools, what we see is an extrinsic push on the child. That means that, like, when they're in the organization, they're walking in hall, or they're walking with that expectation, they're in a uniform, they're following the culture of the building, versus is it really intrinsic in the child, meaning that when they leave the building, do you still see those same characteristics? And this was something that, as a school leader myself, after about 10 years in education, I saw how the students were inside the organization, but it wasn't always transferring out. And so that was something that I became really cognitive of, and then said, how do we develop that? And that really is more intense conversations with students. It is that expectation with your staff, and that it's an even deeper dive into your student. And it requires, I think, a deeper skill set. I think definitely empathy. I think you're absolutely right about the empathy piece of it. A lot of times our schools master discipline, but they don't master empathy, and they don't master being the bridge for students. So when do you see that in your own students? So you have a young person who comes in, a little kindergartner, maybe has been in daycare, maybe hasn't been in daycare, and comes in. And how do you find, even in your little kindergartners, that you create this culture for them, the executive culture?
I think when you redirect behavior, you also need to tie some type of praise into it. I think that's important. And I think when you see a poor behavior, you need to immediately turn that into a learning experience, providing alternative options that we tie into a lot of redirections in our building, that we connect to real life situations that may go on outside of the building. If you behave like this outside of the building, this type of consequence is going to happen. So you need to really focus on that behavior in here, because there's always going to be some type of accountability for misbehaving, but there's going to be rewards also for behaving, rewards in life also. The more you behave, the better grades you get, the better job you may receive, the better opportunities you're going to be provided. The negative behaviors are going to possibly, have you on probation or in front of a judge, and those type of things, negative consequences, punishments, those type of things. So we always try to tie those two into everything we discuss with our students as we're trying to grow them. And the way this model works, and you've had a chance to see it, is we have big forums every day where we're teaching life lessons. We do these assemblies, we do 6 big assemblies every day with the 6 communities twice a day. Yeah. And in those assemblies, we're talking about the daily routine and the academics that are going on in the testing schedule and the guests that may be in our building, but we're also talking about life lessons, how to properly walk, talk, and carry ourselves in an interview, or how to behave in the hallways and what to do, not to do, those type of things. And it's always preached in a way that this is for you to use when you leave school. Also, this is the key to your success, being productive in society. You'll hear that a lot out of our mouths. So it's a constant teaching piece. These students, when I do trainings, we're here to educate them in the classroom and abiding by and following a curriculum, delivering these lessons, but also it's constant lesson life redirections that are going on. And that's tough on our professionals, to just do the basic job of educating. The tougher part sometimes is the social skills, the life skills, the redirecting of constant poor behaviors, and trying to uplift our kids.
Yes. When you have a new
and not burn out.
Yes. I agree with you about the toll that it takes on our staff, because one thing that I realized when I was a school leader, we'd have a new staff member come in and they'd be like, "Oh, this place is so great. It's so easy." And because what they're used to seeing is a lot of negative behaviors among students. And I'm like, this isn't easy. This is thinking every minute of the day that you're setting that high expectation. So how do you onboard a new staff member coming in to understand really the culture, and that this doesn't happen accidentally. This is happening because you're doing purposeful things every minute of every day, consistently.
I think what's important, and I see over my career of supporting distressed schools, my team's experience was around a lot of broken schools. So we saw what was not working with staff. and students. And most of the time it was the staff and the adults that were the problem in the buildings that we were servicing. And a lot of times it wasn't their fault. It was kind of a hand they were dealt with. There were some really broken situations. So we've taken our experiences around broken situations and always have turned it into some type of positive. So when you talk about new teachers, they're attached to a community right away. They probably are going to get a mentor right away. They're going to have a manager. We have managers attached to each of our 6 communities, so they got plenty of support with a mentor, with a community coach, and with a manager. And then we're doing constant PDs, reinforcing everything we're doing. Every Wednesday, we do an early dismissal and we do PDs in our communities. There's lots of team meetings that happen formally, informally. That's something we noticed as well on the road. When we witnessed broken schools, there wasn't any communication amongst the adults. And I still see it when I'm training, that they're not even having meetings. And a lot of times they're not allowed to, or they just don't think they have the time. We dedicate time every week throughout our weeks to have our meetings. Every morning we have an informal meeting. You're aware of this. At 7:30, I have a meeting with my senior team, an informal flash, we call it, before the students walk in the door at 7:45. Every week we have a formal meeting within all our communities from top to bottom in the organization, because that information flow, that communication is critical to everyone's success. Everyone has a voice because of that model.
Yeah.
And if teachers and certain staff members in your building, regardless of where they are, don't feel they have a voice, they're not going to be happy. They're not going to stay around, because their voice is important.
Yeah.
And it should be heard. It may not be the best idea. It may be. If it's a good idea, we're going to implement it. If it's not the best idea.
Yeah.
But being honest and communicating with each other is the way to go.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Communication is key. And I agree with you. The best functioning schools have a real structure around communication. They really spend a lot of time communicating with their staff and listening to their staff. I want to go back to your morning and afternoon meetings with your students. This is something that I think is so important. And when I had envisioned this for my own school, I was thinking like whole school in the gym, and I didn't want to do that because sometimes that can be loud and there's quiet kids, and that can really disrupt their day. But you handle it completely different. So if you could delve a little bit into your morning and afternoon meetings with your students, how did you structure that? How did you design your building to do that? And if someone didn't necessarily have your building, could you give them a recommendation how they could do it in their building?
Sure. It's a staple of what we do. Regardless of the day, we're doing morning and afternoon assembly. The chairs are never broken down unless the area is being cleaned or we have a function in that area. It's that critical to our program and our model, that information share, that redirection, that organization. We do breakfasts in those settings instead of going to the cafeterias. Because of our size, it just makes a lot of sense. We do plenty of announcements, student and staff, so our students have a voice in those sessions also. We've designed the building in a way that space was mandatory when we created a community. It has to be mandatory because it's that key to our program model. We, again, will never not have an assembly. Now, for schools that aren't as blessed as ours with space, which is unusual for my education career and probably yours and everyone else,
Yeah.
it's hard to have available space in your situation. We're blessed here to have that. I would, and we've done it in classrooms. We've done assemblies in hallways because it's that critical to set the tone in the morning as well as to dismiss in the afternoon. We dismiss from our assemblies also in an organized fashion. So you don't release students into chaos. You release them into order. Order being their buses, order being their daycare buses, order being sports or extracurricular activities. Everything we do, we like to process out before that task so we don't make our own internal errors where we're not structured enough and then the students become a bit loose or comfortable. We like to keep things really structured in order and tight to prevent issues from happening. So we operate on our speed. This system allows us to operate on our speed, not the student speed. You'll hear often students will say, we operate on our speed. We run this building. We're going to do what we want. No, the adults going back in time, we should have more schools present day that are operated by the adults and systems and expectations and norms. This assembly allows us to do that. For instance, kids come in the morning, they get their breakfast, they sit in their assembly. They'll sit in their assembly till a start time, and then we deliver our announcements and whatever else we need to do. Then students will then move into lines and move to their first period. And that's how the day goes. Sometimes the little ones will have an assembly after lunch, because you know what that's like after lunch. Kids are riled up.
Yeah.
We'll slow them down, back on our speed, redirect some behaviors, back in school. That structure allows us more seat time. When the kids free flow and they operate on their own speed, we lose critical academic time with our students, seat time with our students, because every single period turns into somewhat of a chaotic situation.
Yes. And you'll hear teachers, not at your school, but at other schools, if this idea was brought to them, that pushback would be, you're cutting into my instruction time. But I agree with
Yes.
you that when you set a structure of order, and that's the expectation, then that carries throughout the day. You're proactive versus reactive in your thinking and your students. Can you tell everybody who's watching how many grades are in those communities in the morning?
So our elementary school is a K to 5. Our middle school is a 6 to 8, and then we're a 9 to 12. We break up those grades into 6 communities. So every community is 2 grades except one, because it's odd configuration. So 6, 7, 8 is 3 grades in one. So they have 2 assemblies built into their area, because 300 students in one assembly is big. But a typical assembly in our building is 200 plus students every single day, twice a day.
Yeah.
And you've seen the structure and the order around it. Is a very powerful tool.
Yes.
When it is run the right way. It really sets the tone in the morning, really can support a dismissal process. And we'll, like I said earlier, we'll redirect behaviors at the end of the day, but we'll also praise our students as they're leaving for the night. You know, hopefully you're safe. Hopefully you learn from this. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
We're always here for you, those type of things.
Yeah,
end the day.
I think that's amazing. I mean, if any of us think about, if somebody was stopping us at the end of the day, giving us positive praise as we're leaving, you know, we're going to look forward to coming back to that place the next day. And I think
Yes.
so many of us are not ending our school days with our students in that way. A lot of times the end of the day can be the most chaotic time. That 15, 20 minutes of dismissal can be the worst time for any school, the most vulnerable time, safety wise, for any school. And so I've seen this at your school. Every time I've come, I've taken a minute to watch this process, because I'm so impressed with it. I love that you said that schools could do this even in the hallway. And I think that one idea there is something that no school can say, oh, we can't do it, because every school that I've gone to has hallways. And so they could bring out those, and they cluster the grades together. So they could bring out the, you know, all the first grade classrooms are down in the hallway, or the kindergartners out there, and start even with one meeting, you know. But I would encourage people to come see it at your school. And the next time I come, maybe you'll let me take some video, and then I can attach that video to this conversation so people can see it.
Be great to do that. I could add 2 things to your comments. You know, the students do come back, you know, and it's evident in our data. You know, we're around 95 to 96% average daily attendance throughout a school year, and we have 1,000 students on a wait list. So that tells you it's in high demand, and what we're doing is working. We wouldn't have that list, and we wouldn't have that type of daily attendance. The students want to come back because they know they're safe and cared for.
I love the 2 comments that you added. I want to stop there for a minute about the caps, just because it did come up, and this is a passion of mine as well. That these caps on our charter schools are really unjust to students. So can you just touch on that a little bit? You have 14, just below 1,400 students in your building, and you have 1,000 children on the waiting list. 1,000 children who want to go to your school and cannot get in not because you don't have capacity or space, but because the Allentown School District has capped the number of children that can attend your school. Can you just talk about that
Yes.
a little bit? And how did we get here in this situation, in your opinion, with caps?
Well, caps, that's an issue you and I have discussed many times, and it's a hot issue amongst the charter school network of leaders. Um, the way we got to this point, and other schools throughout the state have gotten to this point, is when you petition for a new charter school, it starts at the beginning a lot of times. You petition with your receiving district, which is typically a local school district. Ours is Allentown School District. So I really think the petition process, the authorizer process, is first broken because it creates a adversarial relationship right away with your school district, your contract manager, essentially. And it's about dollars for them. How much money are we going to lose if executive or another charter school, comes to town?
Yeah.
So in that process of when they do decide to approve your charter locally, they're going to want to negotiate the caps at that point because they have the leverage at that point. You want your charter, it was approved, but now we need to talk about the terms. In our case, we attempted to remove the caps. We did not want caps in our case. And that's really our right, and the laws supports that there should not be caps placed upon you. But going back to the early, days of negotiating, if you want this charter, you're going to negotiate a cap. They're not going to approve it without. So we negotiated a certain number, and we're 9 years old now. We have not been able to increase that number. Every year we negotiate it. Every year we plead a great case, in my opinion, and every year we're denied. We've had a few things added to our charter, which have been very positive. Grade configurations, like overall caps instead of grade caps, which we had before. The language to negotiate every year has been added to our current charter. We're on our second charter. They're 5-year charters. We're up in another year, so we'll be talking about a new charter soon. But come February, we talk with their solicitor about caps. They have to talk to us about it, and we're going to negotiate, and they're going to use money, which they can't, but they do, as the denying factor. And they may try to spin some other things to hold you back. But it is, in my opinion, and I just spoke with a local reporter about this, and you and I have discussed this, it's the present day civil rights issue of our time, to deprive these students and families of opportunity to better themselves, because they're running from something, whatever it is. I don't even need to comment on that. And to deprive them of a situation to better their children and their family is absolutely wrong, and should be fought on higher levels.
It really should. It does. I agree. It's a civil rights issue. You're blocking children from free public education. And I agree wholeheartedly that the parent should decide where their child attends school. And instead of trying to block charter schools, I think that our district schools could, really benefit by partnering, by visiting the charter schools, and not in an authorizer kind of way, but in a collaborative type of way. And our charter schools would welcome that. If one of our districts said, hey, can we collaborate on anything, athletics or ELA or mathematics or EL students, whatever, we would open our arms and be like, yes, let's do that collaboration, because that's really what this was all about. Charter schools being those innovative schools, being able to have the opportunity to innovate and then bring that back to the district and say, hey, it does work. We're doing it, and this is how we did it. But we've gotten away from that, and the money really plays into that, the financing of our charter schools. And I think we have to take that on too, because Pennsylvania is one of the few places that 100% of the funding comes from the local district. And all of the other bigger states that are not having the issues we're having, they're funded by the state. So then, that argument of money really is taken away, and then you can get to the collaboration. So we're working on that. I know you're working on it there, and we're as the coalition are working on it. So thank you for sharing that part about the caps.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for asking.
Yes. So we're here to talk about leadership, leadership in general, and of course, leadership in charter schools, because that's the field that we're in. How did you decide, not just like, how did you decide to really lean into leadership? I mean, you came into education, but you didn't stay in the place that you were at where you entered. You've gone far from that. So how did you start to really think, hey, I'm going to go to the next level?
Well, I started at a place that believed in the same model we currently subscribe to here now. Is we just I was blessed to start at a organization where they built their bench. They were constantly trying to grow leadership. So the model we've incorporated here is a model I learned early on, and having the opportunity to be a part of that model, I had really no choice. You either sink or swim in that model to become a leader. They push you to become a leader. They teach leadership skills like you wouldn't believe, like no other a place I've been to, and having an opportunity to be in a facility or a place that teaches that type of model is really all I've known. So that's all I've preached and done in my career, is to, be a strong leader, attempt to be a strong leader, and then grow others and allow them opportunities to better themselves if they want to take that on. Not everybody is built or has a want to be a leader, but if you do and you're in our organization, you'll have opportunity, because we're constantly looking to grow, and we're growing leaders all times. So that's kind of how I fell into it. I fell into it and I ran with it, and have made it like my passion. School turnaround and startups, and working on distressed schools with school districts and residential programs just kind of became my niche, and I enjoyed it. I like it a lot. I enjoy the model we believe in, and I enjoy being the leader of it, as much as I can. I have been for 20 years throughout my career. That's all I've really known and done.
Right. In your core team that you have around you, how do you handle distributive leadership? Do you believe in that? Or do you, like, how's your model that you use with that core team? And how do you figure that you guys have stayed together so long?
Well, because it's very collaborative. Everybody does have a voice. Of course, at times I will have to trump certain opinions or decisions and facilitate the room. But we have a team that's been together a long time, as you know, as you mentioned, that knows each other well, that all believe in the core mission and goals and vision of the school. It's undeniable when you walk in the room. You will see immediately that we're all on the same page. That's important. And I think over the years, those who weren't on board with that are no longer with us. And that's fine. If you don't believe in it, if you do, we're here. We're going to embrace you, and we're going to grow together. If not, there's something else out there for you. We don't really stray from the script much. We have had over the years, had to tweak things, change things, reword things, take other ideas from other successful models that we've seen, incorporated additional layers to the program, support services, those kind of things. But for the most part, the base and the pillars that we had a chance to learn early on are still intact.
Yeah.
The voice again is important, in all these informal and flash meetings and these lines of communication that we follow, and these processes and chain of command all allow a voice from the employee, regardless of the levels. And I think that's important. I forget the saying, staff run from culture, I think, or something. When you lose employees, around retention or whatever, they don't run to
Yeah.
something. They're running away
Yes.
from something and attach culture to that. So we assess that also. If we lose students that aren't because of mobility, because we lose a lot of students because of mobility present day, that's everywhere through the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
We'll do an exit interview with the student and the parent to find out why they're leaving. Because if it's for a legitimate reason, we want to know and we want to fix it.
Yeah.
If it's same thing, we'll do an exit interview with a staff member. We have a disgruntled staff member. We want to know why. We want to provide as much support as we can around it. May not work out, but we want to know why. If a staff member leaves without any type of notice, we want to know why. And we want candid feedback. That's how you get better. You don't shun it. You don't not listen to it. Even it may be painful or tough, maybe take a jab because of it, but that's how you get better. And if you're not mature enough, professional enough, and strong enough of a program and a leader, then you're not going to be as successful if you can take that constructive criticism, even from someone who's no longer with you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, sometimes the feedback we get is painful, and I've seen too many leaders dismiss what they don't want to admit. I read something the other day. It says, whatever you don't manage will fail. And I thought that is such a critical statement, because so many people prescribe to being leaders. They want to talk about vision and mission. They want to talk about where they're going, but they forget to manage the organization and manage the people in the organization. And people do stay because of culture and leave because of culture. And I never worried when we lost people either, because I always wish them well. I believe people serve the time they're supposed to serve in your organization. They bring what they were supposed to bring, or learn what they were supposed to learn. Not everybody that comes into our school is there to lead, but I think one of the best compliments I've ever had as a school leader is when I see something that I know was true to my school, and then I see someone take that and replicate that at a new school. And then I say,
that's a big compliment.
That's what they were here for. They were here to learn that piece that we do really well, and then replicate that somewhere else. So I think that is the best compliment. But if you do find, if you are changing your culture, if you're a new school leader and you're changing the culture and people are leaving, you shouldn't take that personal. They're not prescribing to what you're saying. And hopefully you're going to hire the people that will. On the other hand, if, you always have to stop and reflect. If you're a school leader who's been there a long time and people are leaving, something has shifted in your culture, and maybe something has shifted in you that shifted something in your culture. So I agree with you on that. And we both have had similar experiences in leadership. We have a lot of charter schools. We have 184 charter schools in Pennsylvania. And a lot of those aren't necessarily new charter schools, but they have new leaders. They have leaders who maybe have come from public school into charter, and they're a little overwhelmed because charter schools are very unique and it's a lot of work that I don't think people realize how much work it is to run a charter school. So if you were counseling a new leader coming in, what is the first thing or a first couple of things that they could do to maybe not be so overwhelmed? Like if you were taking over a brand new school, what are the first few things you would look at?
And we've done that many times. It's a great question. I would say I'm not really going to touch student issues at the first. I'm going to make my observations, kind of address the staff issues that exist, because they do always exist in my experience, with broken lines of communication, chain of command, staff culture, staff expectations, those type of things will be the first, my first move would be around staff and how I can support them more with systems and processes and procedures. And then once I would stabilize that, through lines of these communication that we're talking about often, I would then address the broken student systems that exist. But if you can fix most of the time what's broken for the adults, the rest will follow. The kids are going to follow in line. So I've always found every single school we've been to that was a distressed school, or we were there to support for a traditional public, It's the lines of communication, the chain of command, the systems and processes that supported or didn't support the adults. And then I'd look at building logistics and those type of things, movement, and just how to streamline things in a way that support the adults in allowing them to work smarter, not as harder, but to wear the students out, not, and because you'll see in these broken schools or schools that are struggling, you'll see the students are wearing out the staff.
That's right.
Let's flip that. Let's create systems and processes that are going to wear out our students academically, through movement, through organization, through structure, through discipline.
Yeah.
That's the key. That's one reason why we retain also our employees, because the culture is so safe and it's built to wear out our students, not our staff.
Yes, I agree. I've seen that in your structure. One of the things that I have found in going into schools is that when I was trying to introduce new systems, a lot of times you want to introduce a new system, but what you really find is that the staff doesn't have the tools, knowledge, or capacity for the system. Like they really,
Yes.
sometimes I think when staff have been like, they didn't want to do something. When I was a younger leader, I took that as sort of like a pushback on my leadership. And later on in leadership, I realized they were lacking something. There was something lacking in them professionally that they hadn't been taught, they hadn't received in a professional development. So what do you find, like when you've gone to turn around a school and you're trying to put a system in, do you train collectively all the staff? Do you have one-on-one meetings? How do you change that staff member?
We try to like force multiply a building, which is like a military term and program that exists like with like we've gotten this serious about it because we've done so many. We've done like 20 turnarounds. Like force multiplier is you take a small amount of specialists with you into a building and you turn that 5 into 50 that believe in what you're trying to do. So we'll take in multiple people if you're blessed to do that. If you're not and you have to go in as one individual, it's obviously much harder.
Yeah.
And I would then, if I went in as one individual, I would do all I can to attract buy-in as fast as I could. And then once I had some buy-in, whatever I'm attempting to deliver, I'm force multiplying the situation. I have more than just my own voice. I have others that are bought in that can deliver the same message to the masses in a building. But when you go into a big school, for instance, which we've done multiple times, you go in with 5 specialists, experts in whatever various different department in a school, and you can affect change throughout the whole school. But they just need to have that ability and skill set to communicate what you're trying to do.
That's great. I appreciate your insight into that. And do you have any final thoughts for our leaders who are watching about leadership or about charter schools?
No, I'm thankful to be here today with you and have this opportunity to speak about my experiences and hoping if there is any leaders out there watching that this could be a beneficial discussion. I definitely encourage people to come tour our school because we do really believe in this culture and it's something to see. A lot of times we found over the years that we would talk about this and the successes of this school and people don't believe it, that it's true. So we would put it in a video and take it to them that way or invite them.
Yes.
For instance, we were doing things in Pittsburgh years ago in Pittsburgh Public. We were working with Pittsburgh Public at the time. They didn't believe it. They sent a bus of central office folks and a school and that leadership of that school to Philadelphia to see what we were doing. They left, they were blown away, couldn't believe it. Next thing you know, we're in Pittsburgh for 5 years helping distressed schools.
Yeah.
So I encourage anyone who wants to come see it. If anyone's interested in the assembly portion of what we do, we can surely show that any day. It happens every day, as I mentioned. And I just wish everyone the best of luck because what we're doing is a good thing. It's a very positive thing. We're really helping kids, and let's keep pushing the caps and really attempt to get more kids into our schools because it's needed for sure.
I really appreciate that. And I agree. You should definitely go visit Executive Education Academy Charter School because it's amazing and it's definitely mission driven. Great leaders. I love this conversation. I hope that you will come and talk some more to us in the future about leadership and about children, because that's both of our passions. So thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me, and I absolutely will come back.
Awesome. Thank you.